Today we are talking about Dynasty sells. This is always a tricky topic. Who should you cash out on? Who should you sell high on? Who should you sell low on? We're going to cover it all today. I'm going to give you 8 players to sell high on or low on. And we're going to start with Naji Harris. Naji Harris is not even the best running back on his own team, and his usage is going to suffer going forward because of it. His backfield mate, Jaylen Warren, outproduced Harris on less carries and bested him in just about every metric possible that we care about when it comes to running backs. Warren outproduced Harris in true yards per carry, targets, way more targets, yards per touch, juke rate, and breakaway run rate. And for Harris, it's as simple really as the target share, because when you go back to 2021, when he ranked as the RB5 in target share, he actually led all of running backs in targets. This is when he finished as the RB6 in fantasy points per game, and he broke out his rookie year, and it's never quite been the same since. And this was largely due to Harris receiving the bulk of the Ben Roethlisberger dump-offs. That was Ben Roethlisberger's last year, and the quarterback change has signaled a change for Naji Harris as a running back, and ever since then, he really hasn't lived up to that rookie season. And in 2023, Harris earned just 38 targets, which ranked number 33 amongst running backs and ranked as the RB 30 in fantasy points per game. Additionally, Harris is going to turn 26 years old before the NFL season kicks off. At the very least, Harris is now sharing a backfield with Jaylen Warren. The truth of the matter is, Harris doesn't see nearly the amount of work, especially in the receiving game, and isn't nearly as efficient as his running mate, Jaylen Warren. And it's only a matter of time before a very smart Steelers organization and coaching staff figures this out and plays Warren over Harris going forward. The next player we're going to talk about is A.J. Brown. Very polarizing player. This might trigger some people, but the Eagles' season ended in just about the worst way possible, and this offense faces a lot of questions going forward. And it's fair to ask the question, will A.J. Brown ever play as well as he did during the first half of the 2023 season? Because there's no doubt he absolutely crushed in weeks 3 through 9. Brown finished as a top 12 wide receiver 6 times and a top 3 wide receiver 3 times. And during that stretch, weeks 3 to week 9, Brown was the wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Better than Tyreek Hill, better than everybody. The problem for Brown was the second half of the season. From week 11 until the end of the season, Brown finished as a top 12 wide receiver just 1 time. He also finished outside of the top 24 wide receivers in fantasy points per game in all but 2 of those games. Brown did suffer a bruised thigh in week 11 in a matchup against Kansas City, but that injury alone doesn't explain Brown's lack of production during the back half of the NFL season. This has everything to do with the Eagles offense as a whole. I mean, something was off, something stopped working, and the Eagles need to do everything in their power during the offseason addressing exactly what went wrong. In the meantime, it is likely wise to trade Brown, who will be entering his age 27 season. And as we all know, age 27, age 28, these are the ages where wide receivers, even elite wide receivers, tend to drop off. So at the very least, it's wise to put A.J. Brown on the block, see what you can get for him, because like I said, he is entering that dreaded age apex territory. Kenneth Walker is up next, and I'm going to admit I was wrong about Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's value took a hit when the Seahawks drafted Zach Charbonnet, and many analysts wondered how his usage would be affected going forward. And after 1 full season with both Charbonnet and Walker on the same team, Walker, I mean, he was solid, and he certainly had games where he showed his true potential as a runner, especially when it comes to breakaway runs. However, Walker ranks as the RB9 according to Keep Trade Cut, and after 2 seasons, Walker has never finished higher than the RB16 in fantasy points per game, and he doesn't see enough targets out of the backfield to justify this ranking. Additionally, Walker's snap share regressed from his rookie season, and there's no doubt Charbonnet ate into his usage. There's no doubt that Walker is a very talented player, especially as a runner in between the tackles, but he is going to be very dependent on breakaway runs and touchdowns. He's very reminiscent of Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is very much the same in that manner, but that he relies on breakaway runs and touchdowns in order to be an elite fantasy producer. And in Derrick Henry's case, he's been able to do it. However, for Walker, Walker has another running back that the Seattle Seahawks like to throw the ball to in Charbonnet, and that they drafted highly in Charbonnet. And at the ranking that he's currently at, RB9, I just don't know if Walker is ever going to live up to that potential. I think he's going to be a high-end RB2, maybe even creeps into the top 12. But getting up to RB9, I think it's going to be harder for him to do that just because of his situation. It's going to be hard for Walker to live up to that RB9 potential. Next up is Calvin Ridley, and the time to trade Calvin Ridley, honestly, would have been before the start of the 2023 NFL season. Ridley steamed up the rankings after an impressive training camp, had fantasy gamers salivating. However, as it has happened many times, and it's going to most certainly happen many, many more times, the hype machine propelled Ridley's value way too high. And as a result, Ridley disappointed and finished as the wide receiver 18 and the wide receiver 27 in fantasy points per game in 2023. Ridley just turned 29 and is scheduled to become an unrestricted free agent in 2024. The likelihood that Ridley lands with a quarterback more talented than Trevor Lawrence is slim, but if he does, that would be the best window to sell him in Dynasty. If he were to end up with an elite quarterback or a quarterback on the rise, that would probably be the best window to sell him. And as always, stay alerted to the news because Ridley is likely going to play with somebody in 2024. And if he does sign with a quarterback that we like or a team that we like, that's when his value is going to spike, and that will be the time to capitalize and trade him away. Jerome Ford is next on the list. Jerome Ford is a tricky evaluation for me, but we can make some guesses and make a logical, educated guess as to what is going to happen. The first thing we need to talk about is Nick Chubb suffered a gruesome injury during the Browns' Week 2 matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's possible that Nick Chubb comes back, but I think it's more likely that the Browns release him. If they do release him, it's going to save them roughly $12 million in cap space. Therefore, you would think Ford should be a favorite to lead the team's backfield in 2024. However, there are many high-profile running back free agents, and Ford is a former fifth-round pick. Ford also wasn't very efficient with his touches in 2023. He ranked number 52 in true yards per carry, number 35 in yards per touch, number 40 in juke rate, number 29 in breakaway run rate amongst running backs. Ford is another running back who's going to have to dodge the NFL draft and free agency. And in my opinion, just looking forward, casting my eye on the horizon, it's going to be very tough for Jerome Ford to assume the lead duties of this backfield, given that he's a fifth-round pick, given that he was not very efficient as a runner. So I think the Browns are going to add to the backfield, so you should sell him now and capitalize on his value. Next up is Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp is still a really good football player when healthy. Unfortunately, he's battled injuries over the last 2 seasons, and his production has suffered, especially this last season, as a result. As long as Stafford is the quarterback in Los Angeles, Kupp will be a productive fantasy player. However, Kupp's production dipped mightily in 2023 as he ranked as the wide receiver 23 in fantasy points per game during the games in which he played. This is a sharp downturn from his back-to-back seasons where he finishes the wide receiver 1 in fantasy points per game. Kupp also has regressed in every season since 2021 in yards per route run. And in 2021, to be fair, he ranked as the wide receiver 1 in fantasy points per game and the wide receiver 1 in yards per route run. So there's really nowhere to go but down from there. But in 2023, Kupp ranked as the wide receiver 32 in yards per route run, and that's quite the drop-off. Perhaps this has something to do with the emergence of Puka Nacua, but it looks as though Kupp is regressing as a player, and it makes sense. He's getting older. So sure, Kupp could have some magic left in the tank, but it's hard to reclaim that magic in the post-30 world that Kupp is residing in. So now is probably a good time to cash out. This next one is likely going to trigger some people, so hang with me. I'm going to try to explain why I believe Devon Achan is a dynasty sell. There's no doubt Achan has RB1 overall upside any given week. However, Achan is likely going to be a part-time player out of necessity throughout his career due to his size. That's my guess. It's possible that they decide, hey, we're going to give you a 55%, 60% snap share. And if that happens, then I probably lose this bet that I'm making by trading him away. but I don't think he's really ever going to get there. I think he's going to be, this running back that they use in spots, and because of his size, because of his explosiveness, they're going to want to keep him healthy, and this is the way to do it, is to pair him with another running back that can ultimately take the brunt of the in between the 20s carries, the goal line carries, etc., in between the tackles carries. So this season, Achan ranked as the number 41 running back in weighted opportunities. Lucky for him, he ranked as the number 1 running back in true yards per carry, number 1 in breakaway run rate. Achan's efficiency propelled him to be the RB5 in fantasy points per game. However, he was the RB24 overall because he only played in 11 games. And this year, there's not going to be a discount on Achan. Word is out. In fact, Achan ranks as the RB7 in Dynasty in superflex formats according to Keep Trade Cut. To me, that's very pricey, and at that price, a Dynasty gamer could likely get a running back like Isaiah Pacheco or Rachaad White, plus something extra, or potentially multiple rookie picks. You could get at least 1 first rounder, possibly 2. It depends on how bad another Dynasty manager wants him. I'll admit, if they increase Achan's opportunities to even 55% snap share, I probably lose this bet, but I think that Achan is going to be a less than 50% snap share guy throughout his career. They're going to use him in spots. Sure, he's going to have peaks like the 51-point performance that he put up against Denver, but those are going to be too infrequent for you to count on. The old cliche with Achan is going to be true. He's going to be better in best ball, because there are going to be some weeks where he's the RB36. There's going to be some weeks where he's a top 5 running back. And that disparity in usage is going to be frustrating. And for my money, I want something more solid. Give me Isaiah Pacheco. Give me Rachaad White plus, and I'll be happy to trade away Devon Achan. But let me know what you think in the comments. Next up is Deebo Samuel, and out of all the weapons in San Francisco, I think I'm most worried about Deebo Samuel. He's the one that scares me the most. There's no doubt that Samuel is an electric playmaker, especially after the catch. In 2023, Samuel ranked as the wide receiver 9 in yards after the catch, the wide receiver 12 in fantasy points per game, and the wide receiver 15 overall in fantasy football. The problem for Samuel is that his fantasy upside is directly tied to his yards after the catch ability. Samuel ranked as the wide receiver 95 in unrealized air yards and the wide receiver 92 in average depth of target. And the 49ers game plan is to get him the ball quickly and in space. And who can blame them? The problem is that once his athleticism starts to fade, Samuel will likely have a steep decline in production and therefore a steep decline in dynasty value. And I don't want to be left holding the bag when it comes to Deebo Samuel. Another issue with Samuel is the way the 49ers use him. Samuel is going to be one of the most likely players to get injured every year because the 49ers put him in the backfield and hand him the ball. Maybe the 49ers are going to shy away from using him that way. I wouldn't bet on it, but there's no guarantee that that happens. And additionally, Samuel just turned 28 years old. He's past the age apex. For all those reasons, it's probably best to put Samuel on the trade block. Last but certainly not least is Brian Robinson. The regime change in Washington might spell a disruption in the volume Brian Robinson has grown accustomed to during his time with the Commanders. Antonio Gibson is going to be a free agent, so there's a world, certainly, where Robinson has this backfield all to himself with Chris Rodriguez. Regime changes mean scheme changes, and the uncertainty doesn't bode well for Robinson. Additionally, Robinson has never been the most efficient player. Therefore, if another player or two are brought in to compete for touches, Robinson could fall out of RB2 territory altogether and therefore lose a ton of value. Simply put, it's more likely that Robinson loses value than he gains value this offseason. And he's approaching 25 years old, which is not quite the age apex for a running back, but it's close. So I would advise trading away Robinson before free agency, before the NFL draft, as soon as you can, because I think his value is going to take a hit this offseason. That is the video. Thank you so much for watching. Click like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to hit the alarm bell to be notified of more content. Thank you again for watching, and be good, everybody. Bye-bye.